Call the meeting to order. Good morning. Welcome each and every one of you. I'm going to start. My name is Byron Chapman, Chair of the TPC. To my right.
Tom Hall, KYTC. Kevin Nassau,
Tanya Higdon, KYTC, Central Office Planning.
Robin Goldie in Dot.
Keith Griffey, Bullitt County.
Dirk Thorne, Louisville Metro.
Brian Dixon, Clark County.
Kevin Beatty, Town of Clarksville.
Matt Minier, Jeffersontown.
Larry Cheney, Kipton.
Ashley Tinius, Kipta.
Nick Vale, Kipton. Andy Rush, Kipton. David Burton, Kipton.
Elizabeth Parker, Kipta. Sarah Bear, Kipta.
Jared Haley, Kipton.
Maria Joycel, KYTC, Central Office, Planning.
Jackie Cobb, citizen.
George Perkins, citizen.
David Coyne, Clark.
Sarah Dobson, citizen.
Art Hagan, citizen.
Scott Swearingen, citizen.
Adam Forsyth, Kipta.
Bob Nunnally, Vaughn and Melton, consulting engineer.
And Bob Stein with United Consulting Engineers.
Okay, welcome each and every one of you. Item number 2 on the agenda is the approval of our September 26th meeting minutes. Motion to approve. Motion, have a second?
Second.
Any additions or corrections to those minutes? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. This is item number 3. This is our public comment period. I think there's a couple, 3 people want to speak to the board. When you do, I ask you to stand and state your name. And due to the time constraints, we have 3 minutes. So who wants to speak to the board? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm George Perkins, not representing any particular organization, but as a grandfather with a stake in the future. The most recent report from the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states urgent and unprecedented changes are needed within the next 12 years to limit the most severe risks from climate change. We must reach 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 to keep global temperature increases under 2 degrees Celsius. Across the U.S., transportation accounts for 28% of greenhouse gas emissions, with the vast majority coming from passenger cars. Given the urgency of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting a transition from fossil fuels to renewables, I strongly recommend that you include a performance-measured goal of emission reduction in your planning. I commend the goal of increasing the efficiency and use of public transit and the safety and efficiency of non-motorized transportation with their accompanying performance measures. Those enhancements can potentially bring about a significant emission reductions. However, the reductions themselves should have their own stated goal and performance measures. Having such a goal would elevate emission reduction to the importance in the plan which it deserves. In addition, it would encourage re-examination of goals like congestion reduction, which work at cross purposes to decreasing the use of private vehicles. One measure which would contribute to an overall goal of emission reduction would be encouraging the use of electric vehicles through the expansion of the network of charging stations. The imposition of taxes on electric vehicles simply to support transportation infrastructure in the face of decreasing gas tax revenue should be avoided. A system based on weight and miles would be fairer and more appropriate. Whatever specific means are included in the plan to advance the goal, I strongly recommend that it include a greenhouse gas reduction target and an accompanying measurable performance metric. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Is this something that you would like to keep for
right.
Thank you.
Someone else?
I'm David Quaker Hart, and I'm just going to ask you to pass this around and take a copy. It's just a simple report for the British government. I think it's relevant. It talks about climate change and what we have to do, or what the report specifically looks at what England has to do to achieve their goals. We're not there yet, obviously. Maybe people in this room don't get outside enough to believe that there is climate change. But most of us at this point are pretty well sold on that issue. And I would hope that you would look at this and consider that we have a long way to go to really put in the infrastructure and to bring about the understandings to really save ourselves. Because it's not 100 years away anymore. It's not even 50 years away. We're talking about the next 5 and 10 years to really start making some significant changes. So I know you're looking at standards and goals for the next 20 to 30 years in this planning, but understand that those will inevitably change as we, as a nation, start to get a grip on how serious this problem is, and that we really will going to have to start addressing this through our transportation and all other forms of planning. Transportation is key. I think it's over 28%. It's actually the largest single contributor to CO2 at this point. And it impacts so many other ways, how we use our land, distances we have to travel to work, our resources. We've seen the destabilization that's now happening in the Middle East. That is not going to create energy security for us. And efficiency, independent of climate change, is going to be an important issue for us to start addressing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, someone else? Yes, ma'am.
My comments are also related. My name is Sarah Dobson, and I'm here as a citizen. I was looking over you guys' plan for 2020, and I was impressed. You guys clearly did a lot of analysis for just the way that people move around these counties, and I think you have a lot of really good ideas to reduce passenger vehicles on the road. You're hoping that people will start biking more, start walking more, and start taking the buses more. I guess 2 questions I have for you are, is there a way we can add a performance metric so that we see the reduction from these plans in carbon emissions in the area? Kentucky is the 8th largest carbon emission state in the U.S. And so the report I saw on that was from 2016 from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So potentially it could even be as simple as asking them for where our carbon emissions are now and then checking with them periodically since they're already measuring it. And then the other question I have is, I noticed in your plan for new buses, as some of the older ones reach their lifespan, that you are planning on adding some electric vehicles for TARC. It said there were only 2 of those. Like, is there a way to change over that number? I'm sure that is expensive, but if you are hoping that more people shift their transportation routes to TARC, like using electric vehicles for that would be amazing. Anyway, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else?
Yes, please. Hi, I'm Jackie Cobb, and I want to comment on item number 5 that you all are being asked to vote on today. I think Elizabeth and Sarah are going to present these 60 pages of performance metrics to you, and they're going to ask you whether these metrics are the right ones to guide the development of the MTP, which is the next 20 years of our transportation projects and how they'll be scored and ranked and prioritized. And I'm really echoing a lot of what my fellow citizens have said here, which is they have 60 pages of metrics to explain how we're going to score and prioritize, and there's no mention of carbon. There's no mention of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's a really important topic that makes this set of metrics inadequate. And so I would ask that this board, as an action from item number 5, ask that KIPTA go back and add a metric that pertains to GHG and carbon emission reductions, because like these folks said, transportation is the single largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in our world today, and you all have a responsibility in your leadership roles to do everything we can to reduce that and track it. So I really can't think of a valid reason not to include a performance metric related to emissions. And so I'll be here for the whole meeting and really look forward to hearing the discussion that you guys have, asking why not add one. In fact, we have a responsibility to do so. We need you all as leaders, as decision makers, to take action on this. So please do not abdicate your responsibility today. We're really counting on you, please.
Thank you. Someone else?
My name is Hart Hagan. I have a local radio show called The Climate Report. I've done 230 episodes in the last year, which means I've uttered about 500,000 words or more on the subject of climate and how to change the problem. Call me crazy, but I don't think I'm crazy. I think I'm really concerned. And it's like Greta Thunberg said, you look around you and you said, oh, the world is literally on fire, and then no action, business as usual. Business as usual leads to mass extinction. I look at the report and I see things like reduce the rate of crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. It's like we could increase our vehicle miles traveled and still meet this metric by reducing the rate of crashes per 100 million. You know, as if the crashes are determined, you know, in our locality. The crashes are more determined by General Motors and by the highway system, et cetera. So I would ask you, if you're the mayor of J-Town or if you're the mayor of any of our cities, I'm going to ask you, you know, do you want a local economy that is run by McDonald's? Do you want a local economy that's run by General Motors or Chevron? I haven't heard people say that they want to come to the Louisville area because we have Starbucks or Home Depot or Walmart. These companies dominate our local economy without giving much back to it. And the plan that I see that's being set forth is a plan that just widens the highways for all these companies to come in and outcompete our local businesses. And you know, McDonald's and Walmart are all bringing in food that has to travel thousands of miles before it reaches us. And a lot of carbon, a lot of toxicity in the food, a lot of air pollution and water pollution is represented by these artificially long distances that have to be traveled. Another thing that I did not see in this report is anything about a train system. I'm looking at this map, and I don't see trains going to Indianapolis or Lexington or St. Louis or Nashville. The mass transit will be the commanding heights of our transportation system, or cars will be the commanding heights of our transportation system. One or the other. No mention of trains in this. Trains are cool, trains are safe, trains have a low carbon footprint, as opposed to everybody in this room knows somebody who was killed in a car crash. Cars are not here because of a free market or because of a democracy. Cars have been imposed upon us by General Motors and Chevron and Exxon since the early 50s, and it's time we take control of our local economy and do what's good for our citizens instead of letting our local economy be dominated by the oil companies and the car companies. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Thank you all for coming and for speaking. Item number 4 is our public meeting report. Ashley?
Yes, sir. We are in a public comment period right now for the participation plan. We have had 4 of the 6 meetings that we're going to have. The first meeting was October 8th, and that was in New Albany. We had another meeting that week, last week, in Shepherdsville. This week we had a meeting in Shively on the 15th, and we had a meeting in LaGrange last night. And tomorrow we will be at the Kentucky Association of Government Communicators Fall Conference in Frankfurt. And then also last Thursday we were at the Bullitt County Chamber Luncheon where Mayor Fisher spoke about regionalism.
Okay.
Any comments or questions?
You want to mention the meetings for next week?
We do have 2 meetings next week. It's the last public opportunity to come out. We'll be at the St. Matthew's Library on Tuesday, and on Thursday we will be at the Ken Ellis Center in Jeffersonville in the public asking for comments, but you can also submit comments via email, phone, social media. The public comment period is going to end November 2nd for the update to the participation plan, and we would really love to get more comments from the public. We like what we've gotten so far, but we'd like to get more, so please encourage your constituents to give us some comments on that participation plan.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Item number 5 is Connecting Kentuckiana Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Elizabeth, are you going first?
We're together.
Oh, you're together. Okay, all righty. We got Elizabeth and Sarah. Elizabeth Farr and Sarah Barr.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the first drafted chapter for our upcoming MTP Connecting Kentucky in 2040. It's the performance and impacts chapter, which kind of goes into detail about the projects that we have and how they may impact the different performance targets and goals that we have. So I'm going to start with a little background on how we got here. Starting with performance-based planning, which is a relatively new process, and is a strategic approach that uses data and performance goals and targets to help support investment decisions. So a couple years ago, KIPTA has developed a performance management plan that's updated every year and goes into extreme detail on the different targets and goals that we have, and the potential reductions that can meet those goals and targets. And so this chapter is kind of in addition to that, that shows which projects may impact and help go towards those goals and targets as a performance management plan, which is on KIPTA's website if anybody wants to check that out. So in that plan, we have many goals and targets that are derived from federal and state goals and targets, but we've also developed many of our own as good planning practice, as well as an effort to kind of go a little further in reaching our goals and targets. So a few months ago, we came to you all with a list that was a list of evaluated and ranked projects, which everyone here submitted through our transportation planning portal. So the next step from that was to determine how those projects may help us reach our performance goals and targets. So we're going to pass out that chapter to you all. Thank you.
Thanks for passing it on. Yeah.
So if you start to flip through this chapter, you'll notice it's kind of broken up by different performance types and the specific goals and targets related to each of those types, and you'll find corresponding lists. Those lists are the projects that may impact those different performance goals and types, goals and targets.
So as Sarah said, it's in federal legislation for us to have performance-based planning in our process. And this chapter represents what we thought was the best way to show that analysis with the proposed projects for Connecting Kentuckiana. So this analysis is just another tool as we go down the road of implementing the next MTP to see where we're at, what kind of projects are being funded, what do those projects do for our performance measures and other planning resources. So we have reviews on environmental justice and the congestion management process. So we can look back and see kind of the state of the system as we go through implementing the next plan. And the analysis for this will also provide the baseline for future reporting with the performance management plan on what completed projects have actually done for the system, what kind of connectivity have they added, or congestion relief have they completed. So I'm going to go over a couple of examples with you all. If you want to take a look at page 36, we have the bicycle and pedestrian network analysis. So this connects to the performance measure that we want to build facilities on the bike ped network that connect to each other so that you can get from work to home and shopping more easily without having to worry about walking on a shoulder or in a ditch and cases. So we're trying to enhance that connectivity with that performance measure. So you'll see the list of projects that have been proposed for the NTP that were given evaluation points, essentially, for the in the evaluation process. So let me get to page 36. Okay, so you can see the list, and it says it has bike facility gap that is covering or PED facility gap that's covering. And in some cases, it does both, because the project might be adding both bike and PED facilities. So we have the list, and then we have the corresponding map, and that shows you the entire region and where these projects are located. And in the highlighted part is showing the gaps that we've identified that are going to be impacted, potentially, if these projects are completed. And the ones that are kind of grayed out in the background are ones that no project is potentially impacting, just based on location. And then with this performance measure as well, because we have the target that's listed in the performance measurement plan, we've kind of done a rough calculation of the reduction in miles of gaps that might be, in 2040 after these projects are built. I know the NTP is only for 4 years, but just looking forward, what might the reduction in gaps in the network be? So, any questions on this example?
Well, on that example, if I'm reading this right, the miles of gap should reduce to 132 miles on the pedestrian network and 23 miles on the bicycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should probably change that phrasing now that you say it. I believe the total gap mileage, Adam, do you kind of remember the total right now? I think it's like 100 and, or no, it's probably like 200 miles. I can get back to you. Maybe we should add where the starting point is for those miles.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions on this? I think Sarah's going to go over a couple more examples.
Okay, so one example I wanted to go over with you all was our environmental justice study areas. And we wanted to go over that specifically because we don't have any specific performance targets and goals related to environmental justice areas, but we know that because some transportation projects may negatively impact the people living in those areas, we wanted to include that in here because of the impact that transportation projects may have on those areas. So if you go to, I believe that section starts on page 68, near the end, you'll have a list of projects that are completely within our environmental justice study areas or pass through them. And this is important because we know that those projects in those areas can be mitigated by non-motorized portions of projects. For example, if there's a roadway widening, it might have to take someone's land, and we don't want that. So, or separate a neighborhood, many factors. But if you add a non-motorized component, such as a sidewalk or bike lane, that can get them out to their destination or to a transit line or a bike path that continues all the way through to their destination. We know that that can help mitigate the negative impact that they may see from different transportation projects. So the projects that made it onto this list were evaluated in 3 ways on our evaluation sheet. And there's 3 criteria that were directly related to environmental justice. And that was increase or improve access to transit, increase or improve access to pedestrian facilities, and increase or improve access to bicycle facilities. And if you go a couple more pages, there will be a map. And on that map, the darkened EJ areas are the ones that have the project going through them, and the EJ areas that are lighter don't have a project going through them. And something I wanted to note about the list is in the far right column, there is a dot, and that dot represents roadway projects that have a non-motorized component to them. And we felt that that was important to note because we know that that type of facility
may help reduce the negative impacts that people in those communities may face. Do you have any more examples? So we wanted to bring this chapter to you all separate from the document itself, because this is one of the most data-intensive ones, and it's an ongoing analysis of things that have been brought to this committee over the last few years. It has a lot of detail in it. It has where projects are located, and it shows what they may impact. And in December, we'll come with the whole document, which will kind of sum everything together.
Do you have any questions on any of the analysis? We can go over any examples that you all want to.
Board, any questions? Well, I think action is requested, and I believe action that requested of us today is to continue with the development of connecting Kentuckiana 2040 using this chapter 5 as a draft. So it's a continuation. It's a work in progress, I guess we could say.
Yes, it is.
And we still have public meetings to go to. Okay.
Yes.
That would be the action that's requested. Your permission to move forward with this in chapter 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to move forward.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We look forward to chapter 6, I guess, right? Item number 6, connecting Kentuckiana air quality conformity. Andy?
Thank you.
Welcome.
So actually, this is going to be a future part of Chapter 5, or an appendix that would go right along with that same chapter. One of the reasons it's not in there yet is because this stuff just got finished early this month. So we'll add it subsequently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what sounds like might be the topic of the day, is air quality. So let's talk a little bit more about it. So just as a bit of a background on what we, or this region, is considered, we are known as what is known as a non-attainment area, and we specifically are non-attainment to the 2015 ground level ozone standard. Okay? That means, in that non-attainment area is all 5 counties of MPO: Bullitt, Oldham, Jefferson, Kentucky, Clark and Floyd, and Indiana. That non-attainment status is based on monitored data. So monitors in not all of those counties, but in, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's just Jefferson and one of the southern Indiana counties has exceeded the standard, that 2015 ground level ozone standard. And so EPA has designated the entire area as a non-attainment area. And part of their justification is that this was the historic non-attainment region that we had 2 standards ago. Okay, we were attainment of the last standard, we're non-attainment of this standard. So they said, hey, since that used to be the region, this is going to be the region again. There's some unfairness to that, to our friends in Bullitt County and Oldham County. But it is what it is. We don't make those rules. As you can see, just the northern Kentucky area, and they have partial counties up there. So only partial counties in the Cincinnati area on the Kentucky side are non-attainment of this standard. Just to let you know, many regions just like this one came back into non-attainment status as the standard came down. So I want to make that very clear. The ground level ozone monitor data, it's not getting worse. In fact, it's getting better over time. It's that those standards get reviewed every 4 or 5 years, and they keep ratcheting them down. So we're caught in that, and it was really close for that matter. And ozone season is a summertime season, kind of like a hurricane season or something like that. So we're just wrapping up ozone season. Some of our friends from Metro APCD were here. They could kind of confirm what I'm saying here. But this year has been a very good ozone year. So therefore, it takes a few years to roll off. It takes a rolling average to get out. And so this is a good year. So hopefully a year or 2 from now, we'll have some really good news in terms of meeting that standard in this region. One of the other pollutants that was always a problem for this region, or always has been, is the fine particulates, specifically PM 2.5, the smallest fine particulates that are in the air. We are attainment of that standard. We were non-attainment virtually forever, my whole career here. The 2012 standard, so we've been attainment since about 2015. They revoked all the old standards, so we're in good shape there. Not only are we in good shape for being attainment, the monitored data show some real good progress, and so in essence, there's really not much of a threat right now to backslide into a non-attainment status for the current standard. They can always ratchet the standard down, but with the current standard, we're in good shape. What does all this mean? Well, all this means is that we have to do a air quality conformity analysis on our MTP and on our TIP, but our TIP is a subset of our MTP, so this air quality conformity analysis is a requirement when you are a non-attainment or what they call a maintenance area. Maintenance area is what you are as a region. Once your monitors show good data, once the air is cleaned up, but you have to go into a maintenance status for a period of years. I think it's 2 10-year periods, and you have to say over time that we're getting better. And, so we'll be there eventually, or they'll make new standards. We'll see. Stay tuned and talk to me in a few years. But nonetheless, and I put continue to. We've always done this. There was only a really brief period where we were not required to do this conformity analysis, and that happened a couple years ago before they adopted the 2015 ozone standard and after they revoked the old PM 2.5 standard. So there's a nice sweet spot about 2 or 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, where air quality conformity analysis was not required if we would have adopted an MTP at that time or done an amendment at that time. So what is an air quality conformity analysis? For those that don't know, here it is kind of in a nutshell. First thing we had to do was take all the projects in from all the project sponsors, from NDOT, from KYTC, the counties, the cities, etc. We review those in-house. In many cases, we talk to you guys and say, hey, what do you mean by this description? What is this going to do here? So we clarified certain things. We took all those projects, or the ones that have potential air quality impacts in the form of can we include them in our regional travel demand model, and we added those projects. We took some of them out that were in the old plan that aren't going to be in this new plan. We modified a whole lot of them. Probably the average project, if you will, was saying, hey, that project's not going to be done in year A, it's going to be done a year or 2 later. Things like that have happened. So in some cases that has air quality impacts in as much as it changes the scenario that we must include it in our travel demand model. After we've got all those projects added, deleted, and modified, we feel pretty comfortable about that, we did what's called interagency consultation. Okay, so that's when KIPTA staff coordinate, essentially it's a conference call, but nonetheless it's consultation that occurs over a week, and then some, and that's with our federal air quality partners, both at FHWA and EPA. That's with NDOT, that's with KYTC, that's with Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District. So all those agencies, state air quality agencies, Kentucky DAQ in Kentucky and IDEM in Indiana. We consult with those agencies, say, hey, here's what we have in store. You guys okay with this? Here's what we did. Here's the changes we made. Here's how we're going to reflect these projects. Those questions were asked. At that point, once we get their blessing, in essence, we put them in, we finalize our model runs. And so I say it's really 2 different models in this case. One is at KIPTA, and that's the travel demand model I mentioned earlier. That's a look at, it says, hey, we're going to have this many people living and working in this region, in this area, and we're going to have this roadway network, as is included in the MTP in the form of projects. What's the regional VMT, vehicle miles traveled? Where are they going to travel? What speeds are they going to travel at? Congestion information comes out of that. We take that model as an outputs from that model, and we pass that along to our partners over at Metro Air Pollution Control District, who utilizes what's known as the MOVES model. The MOVES model is an air quality emissions model that's required to be used to do the conformity analysis. In this region's case, APCD does that for us. So they take our outputs, the VMT, the speeds, for all the different scenarios, and plug it into that model. That model takes things as inputs, take our stuff as inputs along with what's the vehicle fleet look like, how old is the fleet, what fuels will be utilized in each of the model scenarios. Keep in mind there's several scenarios here, among a few other things, and that produces regional air quality emissions estimates. And here we go. So here's the results of that analysis. So this is regional, 5 counties, 3 counties in Kentucky and 2 in Indiana. And this is specific to the ozone analysis, and so that's why it says up there that regional summer weekday emissions estimates. Ozone is a summertime problem. It's exclusively a summertime problem for that matter. And so summertime travel is slightly greater than the average travel. So we adjusted, I think it's on the order of 3% or something like that. The average daily travel for the whole year, you bump it up a slight bit for the summertime estimates. And what I've shown here are these budgets. These budgets for VOCs, volatile organic compounds is what that stands for, and NOx, the size of nitrogen. These are the budgets that are established in the state implementation plans. In our case, we have one by state SIP, if I say SIP, State Implementation Plan. And these budgets were established, it's important to note here, 2 standards ago. Like I said, we're on the 2015 standard now. This region was always in compliance or attainment of the 2008 standard, which is the most recent one. And then there was one called the 1997 standard, which we were non-attainment of for a while, a long time ago. And then for a long time after that, we were that maintenance area. I mentioned maintenance earlier. In other words, we have clean data, but you have to kind of you stay in trouble for a little bit longer, if you will. So nonetheless, those budgets are still the ones that exist today. To be sure, we are in need of new budgets. However, these are the budgets that EPA says we have to continue to use until there are new budgets. So here they are. These are kilograms per day. As you can see, that the tightest one was at 2020. So that is a year 2020 travel demand model scenario, output of ours, put into that MOVES model. And as you can see, with 26,000 and change kilograms per day, less than 1% margin of error between that 26.726 budget. So just under, which is good. As long as you're under, you're fine. But also another thing to take away here is you can see that year over year or every 5 years, these emissions estimates are coming down, and they're coming down precipitously. The reasons for this are cleaner burning engines, cleaner burning fuels, among other reasons. But keep in mind, these emission estimates are coming down as congestion is expected to rise. Okay, so that's an important thing to keep in mind. So anyways, we passed. We're good. We passed because each one of those scenarios in both precursors, the VOCs and the NOx, are all under the budgets that were established years ago. So based on that, we do believe that this is a conforming MTP. And so with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But similar to Elizabeth and Sarah's, this is kind of we're requesting to make this part of the document and then move on to the next thing, the next month and the month.
This, right, to include this in the document.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions? We have a motion to include this in the document.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7, quarterly project report. Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. While my presentation is getting loaded up here by Andy, appreciate that. I'm here presenting the quarterly project review, kind of what's happened over the last 3 months in terms of our MPO dedicated funds. So the TPC, this body, has to approve any projects that are added, modified, deleted, removed from our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which has been referenced before, in our shorter Transportation Improvement Program. This body has the authority to award some of those funds. KYTC has their own pot of funds they can award at the state level, same thing with NDOT, and TARC also receives funds directly from FTA that they have the authority to award. So this is just in reference to those projects that have received what we call MPO dedicated funds in the past. We started this project management process back in 2016. It kind of formalizes how staff works with project sponsors and the committees to plan, program, and prioritize these federal funds. Project sponsors have to submit progress reports, as well as annually they have an opportunity to request cost increases and phase shifts, meaning for some reason a project may have been delayed, or a phase of a project may have been delayed, and that may be pushed back or delayed a year or two. So this is the 3rd year that we've done this. We are planning to organize a project working group probably in the springtime to bring everybody together, make sure this is the best thing for everybody and make sure all the requirements of the process are necessary. So we've heard from different sponsors about some of the burden on them, and so we want to make sure we're working with everybody to reduce any burden, but also make sure that we're being transparent and accountable to the public. Moving on, there are a couple basic rules that we have in terms of managing costs. One being that when there are funds available for cost increases and requests are made, if those requests are less than 20% of the original cost of that phase, then an exception is not required. Anything beyond that is required to be provided an exception by this body. Similarly, with managing schedules, a project phase can be shifted back 2 fiscal years. Once you try to move that back a 3rd year, there does need to be an exception made from TPC. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We talk about what's going on in Kentucky with our projects. And then finally, there is an opportunity, time to time, this happens more often in Indiana, where we have a very small dollar amount that we receive annually. There's some flexibility in moving funds between the dedicated programs. So let's jump into Indiana in fiscal year 2020 and see how things are going there with the 4 dedicated programs. Again, one of the things I didn't mention is in Indiana, the TPC has the authority to award funds for the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, CMAQ, Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP, Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG, and Transportation Alternatives, which are for bike and pedestrian focused projects. In Kentucky, this body only has authority under the 2 on the right, STBG and TA. So at the beginning of fiscal year 2020, and I should say, NDOT follows, with their federal funds, they operate from a July 1 to July 31st, essentially, or June 31st fiscal year. So we were already in the 3rd or 4th month there in terms of obligating funds. In the CMAQ program, we had about $1.4 million programmed at the beginning of the fiscal year. We've obligated a little over $250,000, leaving about 1.1 available. To date, we have not had any obligations for the HSIP program, but based on progress reports that I've received from the sponsors, those are on track and on schedule to be obligated this fiscal year. When I say obligate, that means the local entity, federal government, and the state agency has entered into an agreement to essentially secure those funds for that project. Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. Quick note here, last time I brought this to you guys, that amount that was programmed was about $2 million higher. That was related to one specific project called the Heavy Haul Road Project in Clark County. Those funds were actually obligated in fiscal year 19, so that's why they've been taken out of this report. We did have about $700,000 obligated this fiscal year with about 1.8 left over, and there were also obligations under the TA program, so all those funds have been obligated. We did have an opportunity for project sponsors to request additional funds for projects in Indiana, and we did receive 3 requests for cost increases, all of which were under the 20% threshold as compared to the original cost of the phase. New Albany submitted these 3 requests. The region has enough funds to be able to award those if this body chooses to. One is for the East Main Street to State Street intersection project. The other is for reconstruction of Mount Tabor Road, and then intersection improvements along State Street, both at, I think, Oak and Cherry. These were provided in a handout that went out with the mail-out packet, and so at this time I'm asking for action to approve the 3 cost increases in Indiana. I can take any questions or comments as well if there are some.
Question?
I have a question.
Yes.
On those 3, will the increase cover all the anticipated costs that they're anticipating at this time? Or are they going to come back and ask for more?
I can't speak to that 100%. My understanding, well, we didn't have enough funds to cover every single one of the requests, so I think it is the East Main Street project that was only partially funded. So we don't have any additional funds left in 2020, right. So we wouldn't have any if they did have costs, but so in hindsight, yes, they do have additional costs. However, we do not have funds to cover those because we're expending 100% of what's left over at this time.
Any more question? Motion?
Someone.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Proceed.
Thank you. Moving on to Kentucky. Again, this body only has the authority to award funds from these two programs, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program and the Transportation Alternatives Program. We have really good news this year in fiscal year 2020. For the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, we had about $73 million programmed for projects that we're hoping to obligate those funds this fiscal year. Over the last quarter, $13 million, almost 14 has been obligated, bringing us up to $23 million in obligations this fiscal year. That's from everything I can find, that's a record for us in terms of the amount that's been obligated, $23 million in our dedicated program, and also relative to how much we received. So in this past year, we received about $19 million, so we actually spent $4 million more than we brought in. And that's important because we've had a problem spending funds as quickly as we receive them, hence why there's a $73 million programmed amount at the beginning of the fiscal year. But this is really, really good news. Last year, I think we hit $16 million or something to that effect. So this is a big improvement over previous years, and whether it's partially due to the project management process or a million other factors, it's hard to say. But I think this is important for everyone to know. KYTC District 5 did a lot of hard work to get projects obligated, and project sponsors likewise have done the same this fiscal year. And so I commend everybody for this goal that we've achieved. Phase shifts, as you can see, there's still a difference of about $50 million in projects that were not able to get obligated this fiscal year. There are a number of project sponsors that have submitted requests to shift phases back from fiscal year 19 to future years, 20, 21, etc. Those requests were submitted through applications. A project working group had to meet because many of those phase shifts require an exception because they're asking to shift that phase out for a third or fourth year. A project working group met to talk about all of those projects last month. There's 18 or 19 projects. The staff or the working group did not have enough time to complete that entire evaluation. There was some requests made to add additional time and have another meeting to do so. And so we are going to meet again, that body, the working group, is going to meet again next Friday to talk about those phase shift exceptions. So those will be brought back to you guys next month. I just want to make that clear. Normally we would bring these to you at the same time we're bringing the Indiana project changes. In terms of the Transportation Alternatives Program, again, we received about $1.1 million and we obligated about $1.2 million this year, so that is a good thing. One caveat to that is there is a federal rescissions that is attached basically to the current transportation legislation, and there's a potential that we could lose funding as a result of that rescission. For us, it's really a big unknown right now. Same thing, KYTC is going to be the first to know, and they're going to let us know what those potential impacts could be. So if any of your projects switched funds from TA to Surface Transportation Block Grant, it was because of that reason. We didn't want you to have to lose all of your funding simply because of the rescissions. So I think the Federal Highway Administration is supposed to release preliminary rescissions numbers at the end of October, and hopefully once we get those, we can figure out how it's going to impact our program moving forward. I don't have any project changes for you at this time. Like I mentioned, the working group is going to meet again to talk about those phase shift requests and the exceptions to them. But I can take any questions that you guys may have on kind of the 2019 status of the two programs.
Question? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you all.
Item number 8, fiscal year 2018 and through fiscal year 2021 Transportation Improvement Program. Nick?
Yes.
You still with us?
I am. All right, so Administrative Modification 37 was a very small one. Should be the last 2 pages of your packet. I'll go over these projects real quick because there's not too many. 3 of them, the 3 New Albany projects you see on your list, those are cost increases that all pertain to the action this body just took a couple minutes ago when it came to cost increases for Indiana projects. So those were essentially, you guys approved the change, and now we're able to make that change in our budget, in our transportation improvement program. The other change was simply a change for the state ID for Floyd County's Farnsley Knob Road guardrail installation. That's a safety project where they're going to be adding guardrails up in that area where it's kind of dangerous up in the knobs. And then there was one change in Kentucky. It was very minor. It was for the dynamic message systems that are going up on I-64 and 265. And so there was just minor tweaks to the language that the project sponsor and partners wanted to include. So these do not require action. They are minor administrative changes to our tip. I can take any questions or comments if you have any.
Any questions on these items? Sweet. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you all.
Any other business come before the board? Motion to adjourn? Have a motion, have a second? Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you so much for attending. Yeah.